Good to be with you all today. It's a kind of a miserable day out there, isn't it? Yesterday was so different. It was so very different. I wanted to ask a question. You don't, of course, have to answer it. But what did you do with your day off yesterday? I think most people get July the 4th off. Perhaps you worked in your yard or fixed things at home. Independence Day has always been fun for me. I grew up in Adventist schools. My favorite teacher was a World War II medic who served during the Battle of the Bulge. In fact, he helped get a lot of us ready for what was coming. They started a kind of a, I don't know what you call it exactly, but it's called the Medical Cadet Corps. Anybody ever heard of them? So I learned my right from my left. Okay, while I was there, around, I would have been in big trouble in basic training. But he spoke fluent French, and so after the war, he married a French SDA girl over in Europe. He was a historian and a French professor at school. In his classes, he enthralled me with the greatness of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln. Today, our family, that is yesterday, our family attended the Independence Day parade in Southport. I'm sure all of you have been there at one time or another. There were bands, there were politicians, there were community organizations, there were military units, there were businesses, etc., etc., etc. That was where I got sunburned. Anybody ever notice that on my face? It's not because I'm embarrassed today. It's because I really got plastered by the sun. On my face, on the back of my neck, on my knees. I don't know how that ever happened. And all over. That's what I have to say. So I've been putting medications on it and trying to stay ahead of it. And so far, so good. We skipped the fireworks. Anybody hear it last night? If you were a part of that, I'm angry because my dogs were going crazy. And it didn't seem like it stopped at 10 o'clock. I think it was about 10:20 or something, or 10:30 when there's a big boom goes off. And we had to take care of that. We skipped it mainly because it was Sabbath. On the 4th of July, in the evening, and it was Sabbath, so where did we find ourselves? Right at home. Not because of our animals, but because of our Lord. Sadly, next year will be the 250th anniversary of our independence, and I'm not going to take part in it. Anybody noticed what day it was this year? Friday. What day you assume it will be next year? The Sabbath. That's true. I love my country, but I love my Savior more. America is undoubtedly the most remarkable country in the history of the world. People hate their country today. A lot of them. I see that on television where they do this man on the street thing. And a lot of them don't really have much to say about it one way or the other. I don't know what to say to people like that. They're just ignorant. Most people have never been anywhere else. Nobody ever lived in a foreign country. You find out that this was best after all. country is very special. But we are the citizens of two countries, are we not? You know, when I was a kid, that didn't exist. You were either loyal to this government or this government, and not all this dual citizenship thing. I'm not sure what that means anything. I'm not really sure. It kind of confuses me sometimes. How should we as Bible-believing Christians relate to the civil authorities in our country? I think God intended governments to exist. He depended on them to help keep things regular. And in the New Testament, we read the Apostle Paul had two references to the importance of government. Now, the kind of government that the New Testament lived in wasn't really what we would be happy about, would we? How did the Romans treat the Jews? Not very well. They actually, in the end, in 132, they actually expelled them from Palestine so that they could not live there anymore. No Jew could live there anymore. They were pretty upset because they had so many wars with them. And in 70 AD, you know what happened? Jesus predicted it. He didn't say that it was 70 AD, but he said that look for the armies of the prince. They will come and surround you, and then they will leave. And what happened was, in 70 AD, there was a Roman army that came and encamped around Jerusalem, and then a Jewish army in the north annihilated a legion. And so they decamped and went up to take care of business. And then when they got back, Jews died, but no Christian Jews. They were all gone. Isn't that what Jesus told them to do? Government is imperative for having some virtues or a sense of order. The worst thing isn't a bad government. The worst thing is no government. Then every man becomes his own God, if you will, and decides what he's going to do and what he's not going to do. And usually it's people that are mean-spirited to begin with, people that are not nice to be with. I know that we have a neighbor in our neighborhood. I'm not going to go into it at great length, but he used to keep the decibel level way up with his music, and it wasn't the kind of music that was easy to listen to. And he used to have bonfires that went up 25, 30 feet in the air. And we were worried about, a fire in the neighborhood. And so the police spent an awful lot of time over there talking to him. The last time, they said, if we have to come back again, we're going to arrest you. We had 3 people that moved out because of him, and he's still there. What he did when different neighbors would go and talk to him, he challenged them to a fist fight. He said, and I know how to do it, and I can take you out. In fact, I can hardly wait. In Romans 13, we read, beginning in verse 1, extending to verse 4. I'm not going to read all the verses, but the first and the last are very important. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God, for he is to thee for good. Talking about police officers, talking about firemen, talking about mayors, talking about council members, and so on. The worst thing is for a community to have no guardrails at all. Well, you better be a proponent of the Second Amendment at that point, if you're going to have to defend your family against wicked people. We can rightfully claim order and also relative safety for the citizens of our country. Look at the preamble of our country. I'm not going to go through all of it. I'll go through the part that you're familiar with. When in the course becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected the powers of the earth, the respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable liberty and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. It's not bad. It's not bad. Some people think it's bad. They need to go to some other countries and answer the question, why did 20 million people over the last few years come in here? To be persecuted? To have no opportunities at all? Everybody wants to come here. In fact, they did a poll some years ago about how many people in Central America would like to move to America. And 350 million people said yes. Or maybe we'd like to live in their country and just trade places and see what that's like for 5 minutes. How about the Constitution of the United States? I'm not going to go into that in great detail, but to tell you that James Madison insisted that he would not vote for a Bill of Rights if they did not have amendments to them. So that's what's unique about our country. The first item of the Bill of Rights, and there's 10 of them, is that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibit the free exercise thereof. Now, as a Seventh-day Adventist, I know that that's going to change one day. We're going to get to that as we move along. Or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. By the way, how do Seventh-day Adventists use this to generate or to maintain freedom? Tim? Tim's our man for religious freedom. He is our Religious Liberty magazine man that makes sure that we are delivering these magazines to the people that need them, like sheriffs, like mayors, like attorneys, and different people that are interested in it. It's one of the best magazines that we ever publish. It's high quality stuff. They're talking about issues that are before the Supreme Court right now. And it's amazing. By the way, how do Seventh-day Adventists fight for religious freedom? We also have attorneys that we employ who help anybody that's in a religious situation that's being hurt in some way. I know we have legislated for Jehovah's Witnesses. We have also worked with the Amish people in Pennsylvania who were being mistreated, not according to the Constitution or the first of those freedoms. Now, I can talk about different countries that I'm familiar with. One of them is Canada, one of my favorite countries because of my mother, my grandparents, and so forth. I loved Canada. And people used to talk about, If so-and-so gets elected, I'm moving to Canada. Well, Canada does not have a Bill of Rights like we do. I don't know if you knew that. They don't have the freedom of speech like we do that's absolute. How would you like to live there? Well, you start thinking about what happened to all those truckers a few years ago that demonstrated in Ottawa. The government seized every penny that they had. They confiscated their homes. And they took away their means of livelihood. They were not allowed to work in the country. That's why they have a new prime minister, I think, right now. Because the old one, people got very, very upset over that. How'd you like to live in France? You know, if you're accused of a capital crime, you don't get to have a jury trial. The judge decides. The judge decides. And you are assumed guilty until you prove that you're innocent. Did you ever hear of that? The attorneys in France are not there to make your case. They're there to advise you. And you're on your own otherwise. Now, these are not bad countries. These are countries that are friends of ours. These are countries that we have fought next to and that we have supported. But you think some of these countries are better than America? Try something else. What were the religious affiliations of the 13 states that were uniting themselves together and to go through these ratifications? New England was full of Puritans and Congregationalists. Pennsylvania, Quakers and the Amish. State of Maryland, Catholics, because the state of Maryland was the only Catholic state. Lord Baltimore had been a friend of the King of England, and so when they started his colony there, Catholicism was in the main. But they were very tolerant of others as long as they were Trinitarian. It's in their constitution. It's very interesting. New York had many, many Presbyterians. Virginia, the Church of England. The Carolinas, the Church of England and Methodists. Rhode Island, Baptists. And Georgia, German Moravians. Fascinating. All are equal now and free to practice what they believe. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. John Adams said that. Do you know that the form of government we have, we are the only ones that have it? I'm not saying the others aren't free. I'm not saying that. But I don't know if you were aware, but because I think it was I'm trying to remember which country it was now off the top of my head, that tried our form of government, and it didn't work. It fell apart. And so they went back to the other system that most people use. Let's take a look at deliverances for a moment. I say let us celebrate what we have. It's different, it's unique, because we are different and we are unique. We're not like any other country, as you can see. In Revelation 12 and 13, there is depicted there a war where Lucifer is making war on the woman. Anybody tell me what the woman is in prophecy? It's us, the church. Exactly. Trying to kill, he was when the church was an extension of Jesus, even in his infancy. You tried to get him killed, don't you? Herod. All the children in Bethlehem. But he makes war on God's people. There are 4 avenues of deliverance that God provided that's in the book of Revelation. In those verses. Let's take a look at it. Let me get mine open. Revelation 12, familiar to all of you, I believe, and 13, because it's a part of it. They're connected. Verse 14 we're looking at. Let me go back up to verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman, the church, which brought forth the man-child. It's Jesus. And so we have a situation of persecution here. Let's move on. Let's move on. Verse 14. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent. Now that's to be understood. A day equals a year. It's 1260 prophecy. We're not going to go through that right now. But God sent the wings for her to fly away. Now it's very interesting in here. I don't know if any of you remember the Sabbath that Sean Boonstra had, one of the early weeks that he had, where he was talking about symbolism, where he was talking about all sorts of unique and special things that are in the Bible. And in the book of Revelation, and even in Daniel, you find 2 different places to be. That the beasts came from what direction? Anybody remember? Came out of the sea, didn't they? And they all came out of the sea. But there's one that we're going to look at in a minute that came out of the land. And the land was a refuge for God's people. And so we read, let me see if I got my text here. I do. Isaiah 40:31. Some of you may be familiar with it. For they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Fascinating, isn't it? Second is what is mentioned here in verse 14 and 15. It tells us that they flew into the wilderness. The wilderness. The rest of the world, in Asia, in Africa, and in Europe, was full of people. Just full of people, and they were killing each other all the time. And it's fascinating to look at history and see that. But God had carved out a place that was relatively uninhabited to send his people. You know the story about the Pilgrim Fathers and why they came over? There were Puritans that had to leave Britain because even though Britain was somewhat, at that point, Protestant, I guess you could call it that, if the people did not follow, they weren't allowed to have worship service. They weren't allowed anywhere to be able to practice their faith, or they would be imprisoned, or worse. So they went to Holland. And then from there, they got a chance to get a boat that came to Massachusetts. And we all know about Thanksgiving. In the wilderness, they were nourished. In the wilderness, they were safe. In the wilderness, they were not persecuted. And then we go to verse 15. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as of a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away in the flood. That's interesting, isn't it? And the earth opened up. Let me skip on to verse 16 then, because this is where it says, and the earth helped the woman. And what's the earth? It's a place of refuge, isn't it? And the devil tries to find another way to threaten us. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And so, once again, God delivered his people. Then we come to this last one. It's very interesting. In chapter 13,